Thank you for turning to page 121. Today's topics, I'm going to cover a few things today, is primarily going to be magic resistance. It's a little confusing in AD&D, and the actual explanation is very confusing, but I'm going to show how we run it at my table, and I've written a little handy chart in here in my Earth's Opus Omnibus, or the OO, this little book I put together for my players a few years ago. We're going to take a look at that chart too and how it can simplify when you need to figure out MR based on the caster level, things like that. MR changes with the caster level, and I'll explain how that happens. We're also going to take a look at layered defenses. Layered defense being if I have a displacement cloak over a stone skin spell, or if I have magic resistance with brooch of shielding and scarab of protection. What order do they fall in, and how can I do that quickly at the table without stopping my game to have to look things up? I bring these up because these are all things that over the years have been a problem at my table. I've also had one or two inquiries in the comments about them over the last year or so. So I thought I'd address them all in just one video since they're all kind of related. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at magic resistance and layered protection today on page 121. I wanted to show you a little gift that came to me from one of my players, Craig. Occasionally, the players will get me a little gift, kind of as a thank you for the hours I put in as the DM prepping the games. We always host also. Craig painted these. I think he did a beautiful job. He felt we needed a hearth for the tavern set that I have, so he went ahead and he painted one up. I think he did a great job. And what good is a fireplace without wood to burn? Another nice paint job there. And then, of course, a comfy chair. So there we have it. Hand painted by Craig. Craig, I want to say thank you. I appreciate it. And these absolutely will be adorning the barn very soon. So once again, thank you for painting these up and contributing to the tabletop. So to begin our discussion of magic resistance in AD&D, I'm going to look at the deities and demigods description of it. The first description is from the Monster Manual, and it's almost identical to this, but the deities and demigods adds just a little bit more to the conversation. So here we go. Magic resistance right there. And go ahead and bring her down a little bit, and then zoom in a little tighter. There we are. Magic resistance. This indicates the percentage chance of any spell absolutely failing in effect. In effect, regarding the magic resistant creature. It's based on a spell being cast by a spellcaster of 11th level. I'll explain why they chose 11th level in a moment. And it's adjusted upwards 5% for each level below 11th, or downwards 5% for each level above 11th. Thus, a magic resistance of 95 means that at 10th level, adding 5% has no chance of affecting the creature, while the 12th level caster has 10%. The 95, 5% plus his own 10% he adds. Even if the spell does not affect the magic-resistant creature, the creature is entitled to a saving throw, if applicable. The creature's magic resistance extends only to its immediate possessions, anything carried or worn. Area effect spells will still function if targeted with a magic-resistant creature in their effect. This was a big area of confusion at first when we first started using magic resistance. Creature itself might not be affected, though the others in the spell area will be subject to spell effects. For example, a fireball might wipe out a cluster of orcs, and the devil standing in their midst might be totally unaffected due to its magic resistance. The magic resistance of a creature has an effect on certain existing spells, such as Hold Portal, where it indicates the probability of the magic resistance shattering the existing spell. That last part we've never really used. We keep MR at magic resistance only affecting the creature and items carried. We don't let them disrupt spells. And then the other thing we have, special note here, certain deities have special abilities of magical origin that never fail. A weapon that never misses, or an ability against which there's no save. Creatures with magic resistance may still avoid the effects of these abilities if they make a successful magic resistance roll. To determine the level of magic ability, use the deity's highest level. So that was an interesting touch too. I would not allow that MR to apply to a magic weapon that never misses, any more than I would ever allow magic resistance to apply to a Vorpal sword or sword of sharpness, or for that matter, a +1 sword. And I'm going to explain my rationale in just a minute. But now we're going to take a look at magic resistance itself, I'm going to look at the chart and explain the levels of calculating it. So for that, we're going to go to the OO. We're going to back the shot back out. Whoops, eyes going tight. Okay, back it out. And this is my copy of Earth's Opus Omnibus. It's a little thing I put together for my players years ago. And it helps clarify some of our house rules, really, more than anything else. I've got a bunch of spells in the front, and then a big section on different things in the back. The strength bonuses starting at 16, going through 25. But for today's topic, magic resistance chart. Now, I've discussed this before. I've shown this before on my channel. I just want to show it again. The way I made this chart was pretty simple. I took magic resistance at starting 11 is 0% change. So if I have 10% magic resistance and you are 11th level caster and you cast at me, I have 10% resistant to it. But if I am to have my 10% magic resistance and you are 13th level, you take away 10% magic resistance, I have 0. And we don't play that you always have some MR, 1%. No. If you lose your MR, you lose your MR. So if your level is high enough to wipe out MR entirely, of course, that's what you do. Conversely, if I have my 10% magic resistance and it's lower, somebody is lower than 11th level, so say a 10th level caster, he would add 5%. So my 10% would become a 15. Wands go at 6th level. So I would add 25% to my 10% magic resistance for a total of 35% against a wand. That's pretty powerful. And that's where when you get into items that give out magic resistance, you have to be careful. You don't want to give this stuff early. Magic resistance, in my mind, is for higher level characters. I'm talking like 10th and up before I start really dealing with much by the way of magic resistance. It's something that can inexplicably trip up your game. Now, as the example says, if I am standing in the fireball, I'm with my party and there are 4 other players, but none of them has magic resistance. I've got my 10%. Somebody shoots a wand of fireballs, adding 25%. I have a 35% MR and I roll a 20%. That is success. It's 35 or less for a successful MR check. I take no damage. However, everybody else in the party takes damage as normal. My magic resistance does not negate the fireball. Even if the fireball was centered on me, the fireball still detonates and goes off. So that's how we do magic resistance, and that's how the book says you do. I just want to touch on a few other points of magic resistance house rules that we've done. I had a player years ago who argued that a wall of force would not work if somebody made a magic resistance check. Some of the older books do hint that that's correct, but I as a DM ruled that that was not correct, at least not at my table, simply because with somebody able to just walk through a wall of force, it negates a pretty high level spell. I really just didn't want that wandering around in my game. That's the exact same rationale I make for not having somebody with magic resistance being able to take out a hold, portal, or wizard lock. It's just something that's not directly affecting them, it's affecting the door. I know there's a rationale that says, well, it's affecting them because they can't go through the door. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I don't allow it. The same player also argued, and he was a great player, by the way, one of my good friends, moved away years ago. Great player, I'm not complaining about him in the least, but he was a bit of a rules lawyer. And he said, hey, wait a minute. I have magic resistance. I should get a check against that Vorpal sword that just swung at me. I should check against the magical effect. And again, I suppose rules as written, that's correct. But fun in the game? Nah, that's too much power for something like magic resistance. We do not allow the bonuses of magic items or arrows or anything like that, magical weapons, to be affected by magic resistance. So if you're hit by a +1 sword, you don't get a magic resistance check to reduce the +1 damage. You just eat the damage. It's just how we've done it. It's just the rationale we've done. I think it's the best way for our game to do it. We've also named certain spells that do not allow magic resistance, like Wall of Ice. Or not Wall of Ice, of course, but Ice Storm. Since Ice Storm is magically conjuring up large chunks of ice to pummel you, then magic resistance will not apply since it's the ice that's pummeling you. The fact that I conjured the ice doesn't really make a difference to when it impacts you. You still take the damage. So in our game, Wall of Ice turn on its side, or an Ice Storm spell, which is the same effect, will not get a magic resistance check. You'll just eat the damage. We also do not allow magic resistance checks against breath weapons. Wait a minute, those are magical in nature. Yes, they are. And again, game flavor, I did not want magic resistance becoming this Deus Ex Machina that just destroyed my game and upended a lot of stuff. So I said, no, you're absolutely right. It is magical in nature, that acid breath from the Black Dragon. You should get an MR check, but at my table you don't, because I feel it's more fun and frankly puts more fear in dragons, since half the game is named for them. I think it's better to have breath weapons of any kind not be affected. Also, conversely, we do allow an MR check from gaze attacks that directly affect you, such as a vampire's charm or Medusa turning you to stone. Because those are magical effects that are affecting your body, we do allow magic resistance checks on those. So there's just a few of our rules on that. Also, I want to point out, magic resistance for the check, it's irrelevant whether there's a saving throw or not versus the spell. If it's something that would affect you, like an Otto's Irresistible Dance or a Charmed Person. If I have my 10% magic resistance and there's a 5th level wizard who's going to cast a Charmed Person on me, the very first thing I check is my 10% plus 30. I have a 40% resistance to that charm ever affecting me. So for magic resistance, you check the MR first before the spell ever gets in, and then if need be, you check a saving throw, if the saving throw would apply against anybody who would be affected by the spell. That's part of what I was discussing when I meant layered protection. So now I'm going to use an extreme example of layered protection involving magic resistance. If I have a higher level player, and that higher level player has 20% magic resistance, has a Scarab of Protection, which allows a saving throw against spells that don't grant saving throws, and has a Brooch of Shielding. How do I do that? Which is affected first? Does this do? And he shot magic missiles. Magic missiles are shot at him. How do I affect him? Does the Brooch of Shielding automatically absorb them, or do I do it another way? The way I do it is the layered defense. You do magic resistance check first. See if the magic even gets through the gate. It did get through the gate. Okay. Now, the next step for that is a saving throw. Because I have the Scarab of Protection, something I looked at a few weeks ago on my channel, the Scarab of Protection opens the door for a saving throw versus the magic missile, which ordinarily would not allow it. And say my saving throw starts at a 20 with the magic item, and I have a +2 Ring of Protection. That brings me down to an 18. I throw the dice for my saving throw. If I throw an 18 or greater, I take no damage from the magic missile. I'm not saving per missile. I'm saving for the spell. It's one save, no matter how many missiles are coming at me. So I throw my dice, and I don't make my 18 saving throw. I only roll a 12. So now it goes to the Brooch of Shielding. The Brooch of Shielding, the damage from the magic missiles is 24 points. The Brooch of Shielding has 15 points left in it. The 24 points gets reduced by the Brooch of Shielding, 15 points. The brooch is no longer useful because all its charges are gone, and the player eats the remaining points of damage. So 15 from 24, the player eats the remaining 9 points. Interestingly, by the way, if you're wearing a Brooch Shielding that is exhausted by having all its charges used up in absorbing damage, I have the thing blow up on your chest and give you an extra d6 of damage. Just a little house rule that I've thrown in. It's just kind of fun. It's only happened once or twice, but it is fun. Here you're saving damage, and you end up taking 1 to 6. So that is a good example of layered protection. In this case, 3 layers: the magic resistance, the Scarab of Protection, and the Brooch of Shielding. It had to go through all 3 layers before it could do any damage to the player itself. And now we're going to take a look at the similar thing, but this is versus a physical attack. Magic resistance would not be a thing in this. You have a player character, a wizard, who has a displacement cloak. They've been lucky enough to get a displacement cloak. Fairly rare in my game, by the way. Which, of course, when someone swings with a weapon and a displacer cloak, the very first attack misses. With that situation, the first attack missing, this player wizard has also got a stone skin on himself. Now, stone skin in my game is the original one from Earth Arcana, where it fends off 1 attack and 1 attack only. So if a gargoyle has 4 attacks and he hits all 4, his first attack and damage are negated by the stone skin. The other 3 go through. That's how we play it. So in my example, my displacement cloak and my stone skin are there before I ever get to damage on the magic user. Which do I use first? And this does still cause confusion at my table sometimes. The answer again is, was he ever hit? And the answer to that is, did the displacement cloak work? If that's the case, yes, it was a displaced attack. The attack never lands. Therefore, the displacement cloak defense is used up. When someone attacks someone wearing a displacer cloak and they see the person displaced, then they can attack them, and the cloak provides +2 armor class. So the bad guys launched his first attack at the player, swung, and because of the displacement cloak, the attack was displaced and missed. His second attack, he swings, and this time he hits, penetrating the magic user's armor class. Now is when the stone skin comes in. And at my table, stone skin defense always comes with the word ting. And that's just, my players are just looking at me with ting, and I know that I didn't land any damage with that because I took out a stone skin. It's just another goofy thing at our table. When the stone skin goes up, the player lets me know by just saying ting. They can tell me I have a stone skin, but it's more fun if you just say ting. So now that I've gone through the displacer for the first attack missing and the stone skin for the second attack, now if there were a third attack, that third attack would land on the magic user and do damage as normal. So again, that's an example of layered defense. So a layered defense can apply to magic being cast at you, but it can also apply to physical attacks. There are other versions of it. I'm just using these as my examples. So that's it. That's all I've got to say today about magic resistance and layered defenses for magic and physical attacks. I realize that most of this pertains to higher level characters, 10th, 12th, 13th level and higher. It's just a topic that does come up at our table once in a while. We do have some characters at our table that are over 40 years old. They are very high level, and once in a while we dust them off when we play them. So as a DM, I have to be ready for this kind of stuff at any time. So that's it. I hope that was a little helpful, explaining a little bit of that. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you liked what you heard and saw, please like and subscribe. I am still doing a subscription. Also doing a Patreon. If you could help out there, I'd still like to grow my equipment and grow my backgrounds a little bit. But that's it for today on page 121. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.